There are so many different ways to produce power in this day and age, and how short-sighted it is that they would do this. The province thinks nothing of inundating First Nations lands. They think nothing about destroying their way of life, the ecosystems that support the fish and the wildlife. They think nothing about the rights that are allegedly protected in the Constitution. Site C, as we all know, is a political decision, purely politics. Oh my God, the LNG plants aren't going ahead, and we made that promise at the last election, and we have nothing to show. And that's why they've done it. It's not for the power we don't need. It's because they want to show they have some legacy. The Joint Review Panel that Dr. Swain sat on found out there would be significant adverse effects on fishing, on hunting, on trapping, on the ecosystems. Significant adverse effects on the cultural and heritage resources, not only of the First Nations, but of everybody, let alone the destruction of all the farmlands and people's homes. And in spite of that, not only did the provincial government say yes, but so did the federal government. And there is no going back on that, unfortunately. One of the biggest costs I see is the burial sites, the cultural sites, the heritage sites. And when you sit down at the table with the government and they try and work out an accommodation or a compensation package, how much money do you ask for? The graves of your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, the ancestors. How much do you put on a sacred site, sacred ground, where your ancestors have drawn strength forever? How can I get a compensation package when I can't even put a value on it? How much does it cost to give up your right to hunt? In the area we're talking about, there's so much development. Oil, gas, mines, everything you can think of in that area. And now you've got another dam. The cumulative effects alone on the Treaty 8 people is massive. But if everything's gone, if all the moose are green when you open them up, when the fish have too much mercury in them, what do you have left? And how much cost is there in that? And I don't think those numbers, I know those numbers, aren't in the cost of the $8.8 billion to build Site C. Because the cost of losing a sacred site, the cost of losing a right, is invaluable and irreplaceable. One thing I wanted to talk about, and it wasn't one of Dr. Swain's alternatives, but it's something that I've devoted the last 14 years of my life to, and that's clean energy. Right now, BC Hydro is offering basically no opportunities to create clean energy. They had a small program, and everybody has filled the spaces till 2019. After 2019, BC Hydro says, we don't know what we're going to do, but we will take 45 megawatts of power every year until then. And this is for small projects, micro projects, to the bigger projects. You know that the clean energy industry in British Columbia has invested the $8.6 million, almost the same as Site C. They've invested $8.6 billion in this province by building projects And that's a lot. They've also supported almost 16,000 direct full-time equivalent of construction employment and another almost 5,000 person years of employment in the coming years. So basically, there is 800 full-time jobs around the province, Site C is going to have 25 jobs, 25. Of course, 25% of BC Hydro's power comes from independent power sources and 14% from independent power producers. There are about 125 First Nations that are involved in the clean energy industry, and this comes from revenue sharing to full ownership and everything in between. It brings jobs, it brings money, it brings pride in the community. It brings a diversification of the economy. In my First Nation, we built a 6.5 megawatt project. When we pay off all the debt, we're going to be getting 1.5 times the money we get from Indian Affairs every year. 1.5 times. And to us, that's huge. From a First Nation that's always been dependent upon the federal government, to being able to be revenue, basically making our own revenue. And so all of these communities are benefiting from clean energy. But the government made a conscious choice to move away from that. The Souk First Nation, Beecher Bay, they want to build a wind farm out in Souk, out in that area with Island Timberlands, or is it Timber West? I can never remember. And that would be 300 megawatts, billions of dollars of investment, but they have no one to sell it to because BC Hydro doesn't want the power. There are 3 First Nations up near Tofino that want to build projects up to 15 megawatts. I could go around the province. The loss of investment for First Nations in clean energy is huge. Because, you know, clean energy has environmental values that First Nations want. They don't want the Site Cs. They don't want the LNG or the oil and gas. They want something with high environmental standards. But I want you to know that clean energy producers could have built projects as we needed power. Not all this power coming online with Site C. Every 3 or 4 years, get some more projects going. You can just keep building as you needed it. The risk, the financial risk, is with those people. It's not taxpayers, it's not the government, it's private industry that takes that on. It's not the risk of you. And not only that, there's amazing technology going out there. You know, there's just all kinds of testing of different kinds of power, whether it's wave power or kite power. There's all these neat things going on out there. And British Columbia is going to be left in the dust because there's not going to be any opportunity. Lots of power producers are leaving the province because there's no opportunity here. And what a loss. So that's kind of my own, my own pet peeve. And so the BC government consciously made the decision to shut the door on clean energy. $8.6 billion of investments. We don't need you anymore. And it's a tough battle that we're stuck in. And I'm fighting for First Nations, for their opportunities, because they want to do this. And if we don't need the power, they're not going to buy it. So it is a tough situation, but there's a viable alternative out there to Site C. And we lobbied every single Liberal member before the decision was made on Site C. They all knew, they all understood, but they wanted to build Site C that badly. And I think as well, one of the points that I want to make is that where's the credibility in a government that spends almost $9 billion and may go higher And they don't have anybody to sell the power to. You know, I was remembering the story that I think might have heard you tell about there was a dam called Limestone in Manitoba, and they started building it. And after 2 years, they realized, hey, we don't have a market for this. And they stopped building it after 2 years. They put it on hold for 7 years while they went out and they got a power contract to sell it to the States. You know, and as Canada celebrates 150 years, I think, what have we really accomplished? You know, the colonialism continues, and the government pushes their projects through because it's for the good, for money, for them, for jobs. And I think that with a decision that was unwise as going ahead with Site C, just means a real death knell to relationships of Treaty 8. And, you know, there are some First Nations up there that have signed on to agreements. Some of them have signed on to agreements because they're afraid that it's going to get built anyway and they're going to be left in the cold. And then now you have First Nation against First Nation. It's unfortunate that we've reached that point. And I don't know how we're going to stop it, but I think people are going to continue to fight on Site C for as long as they can. Cléco, Cléco.